The summons. The Valdraxi Empire had conquered 17,000 star systems in 3 centuries. Their crystalline warships moved through space like shards of frozen midnight, and their diplomatic corps spoke in perfect harmony, literally. When the three-headed triumvirate spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. But today, in the obsidian halls of the Imperial Nexus, something unprecedented was happening. You wish to what? High Archon Zelvares demanded, his center head tilting in disbelief. Captain Mira Kessler stood before the towering alien diplomat, her worn leather jacket looking absurdly casual against the grandeur of living crystal walls. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her green eyes held no trace of the fear the Valdraxi expected. "We're leaving the Empire," Mira repeated calmly. "Humanity is formally withdrawing from Imperial jurisdiction." The chamber erupted. The assembled delegates, mantis-like Screeth, floating luminary orbs, armored Korthan warriors, all began speaking at once. Humanity comprised barely 6 colony worlds on the Empire's outer rim. They were insignificant. Irrelevant. "Your species was granted the privilege of Imperial protection only 40 cycles ago," Zelvares said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You contributed nothing during the Skorax incursion. Your technology is primitive. Your military laughable. You exist because we allow it." Myra's companion, Dr. Jonas Chin, adjusted his glasses nervously. The elderly scientist looked completely out of place among these cosmic powers, clutching a data tablet like a shield. But Mira simply smiled. "That's the thing about humans, High Archon. We don't do well with allowing. We prefer earning." "This is sedition," hissed Ambassador Screeth Prime, his blade-like arms clicking together. "The penalty is planetary subjugation." "You could try," Mira said softly. The temperature in the room dropped. Zelvares leaned forward, all 3 heads focusing on the human captain. "Are you threatening the Valdraxi Empire?" "I'm stating a fact. You've ruled the stars for 3 centuries, High Archon. But you've never ruled us." "Not really. And now we're making it official." Jonas finally spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. "If I may, we've prepared a demonstration. To prove we can defend our sovereignty." "A demonstration?" The luminary delegate pulsed with amused light. "What could a species 40 cycles into space travel possibly demonstrate to us?" Mira tapped her wrist. "Show them Reeves." In orbit above the Nexus planet, something impossible happened. A Valdraxi dreadnought, the Infinite Sovereignty flagship of the 7th Fleet, simply vanished from sensors. 3 seconds later it reappeared, on the opposite side of the planet. The chamber fell silent. That's impossible," Zelvares whispered. "Jump drives don't work in gravity wells. The physics." "Human physics," Mira interrupted, "work differently. We don't manipulate space-time like you do. We go around it, under it, through places you don't even have equations for." Jonas pulled up holographic schematics. "We call it probability tunneling. Your species think in terms of what is. We think in terms of what if. While you were conquering with your perfect technology, we were experimenting with imperfect solutions. Turns out, the universe has more loopholes than you realized." The Korthan War Master, General Dravik, slammed his armored fist on the council table. "Parlor tricks. You moved 1 ship. The Empire has millions." "We moved your ship," Mira corrected. "Without your crew noticing. We overrode your security, your navigation, your awareness itself. That dreadnought could have reappeared inside a star, and there was nothing you could have done about it. The implications crashed through the assembly like a tidal wave. If humans could manipulate vessels remotely, no fleet was safe. No stronghold secure. This is an act of war, Zelvares declared, but his voice wavered. No, Mira said firmly. This is us leaving. Peacefully. We're taking our 6 worlds and we're asking, politely, to be left alone. We don't want your empire. We don't want conflict. We just want to be free to figure out our own path. And if the empire refuses? Myra's expression hardened. Then you'll learn what happens when you try to cage a species that evolved fighting itself for 10,000 years. You've conquered every rational, unified species in this galaxy. But humans? We're not rational. We've been to our own moon just to plant a flag. We've split the atom just to see what happens. We're the species that looked at the most dangerous predator on our planet, ourselves, and said, let's domesticate that. Jonas added quietly, every other species you've absorbed had something to lose. We've spent our entire history losing everything and rebuilding from scratch. We're good at it. The High Archon's 3 heads conferred in silent communication. Finally he spoke. The Empire will consider your request. But understand this, Captain Kessler. If you leave our protection, you leave our restraint. There are things in the dark between stars that even we fear. Myra's smile didn't waver. High Archon, we are the things in the dark. We just didn't want to be rude about it. As she and Jonas turned to leave, the assembled delegates sat in stunned silence. Humanity, the youngest and weakest member of the Valdraxi Empire, had just done the impossible. They'd said no. And somewhere in the depths of space, 6 human colony worlds began preparing for either the greatest freedom or the greatest war in their species' history. The Architect's Gambit. 3 weeks after Mira Kessler's declaration, the Valdraxi Empire still hadn't responded. In the human colony of New Kyoto, orbiting the star Kepler 442, that silence felt like a countdown. Tomas Reeves sat in the underground command center, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. At 26, he was humanity's youngest chief engineer, a prodigy who designed the probability tunnel drive while most people his age were still figuring out their careers. His brown skin gleamed with sweat under the harsh fluorescent lights, and his usually playful demeanor had been replaced by intense concentration. "Talk to me, Tom," came a voice from behind him. He turned to see Admiral Kenji Nakamura, a man whose gray hair and scarred face told stories of Earth's last conventional war. Kenji had been a submarine commander before humanity reached the stars, and he'd brought that same calculated patience to defending humanity's new worlds. "The probability math is holding," Tomas reported, pulling up cascading equations. "But there's a problem. The Valdraxi are adapting faster than we predicted." "Show me." Tomas expanded the display, revealing sensor data from the border systems. "They've started deploying reality anchors, devices that stabilize spacetime. They can't stop our tunneling drives, but they can detect the probability fluctuations when we use them. We've gone from invisible to, well, visible in slow motion." Kenji stroked his chin. "How long do we have? At their current rate of deployment? 6 months before they have full coverage of our space. Then they'll know every time we move a ship, every time we activate the drive. Our element of surprise evaporates. Then we don't give them 6 months." Both men turned as Mira Kessler entered the command center, followed by an alien neither had seen before. The creature stood 7 feet tall, covered in iridescent scales that shifted between blue and silver. Its 4 eyes blinked independently, and when it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that made the human's teeth ache. "This is Zalith," Mira introduced. "Former Valdraxi intelligence officer. Current defector." Kenji's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "A defector? Are you insane, Captain? This could be a Trojan horse." "I've been monitoring her for 3 weeks, Mira said. "She reached out through back channels, provided verifiable intelligence. She's legitimate." Zalith's scales darkened to a deep purple. Shame, Tomas realized, having studied Valdraxi color language. "I served the Empire for 60 cycles, the alien said. "I believe we brought order to chaos. But what you did in the Nexus chamber, it changed something. You reminded me that there are costs to order. Prices too high to pay." "Pretty words," Kenji said coldly. "What can you actually offer us?" Zalith projected a hologram from a device on her wrist. The image showed a massive structure, thousands of kilometers across, hanging in deep space. It looked like a geometric flower made of metal and energy, petals of impossible architecture folding into dimensions the human eye struggled to process. "The Eternum Forge," she said. "The Empire's most classified installation. This is where they build their dreadnoughts, where they store the quantum cores that power their reality stabilization technology. It's also," she paused, scales flickering to crimson, "where they're building the nullification array." "What's that?" Tomas asked. "A weapon designed specifically for you. It doesn't destroy matter, it destroys possibility. Fire it at a planet, and every quantum state collapses to a single outcome. Your probability tunneling becomes impossible. Your atomic structures lose coherence. Everything becomes certain. Fixed. Dead." The room went cold. Mira spoke first. "When will it be operational?" 80 cycles. Your months. It takes enormous power to erase possibility from that much space. But once it's complete, they'll use it on New Kyoto first. A demonstration. Then they'll give the other 5 colonies a choice: submit or be nullified. Kenji's expression could have cut steel. "And you're telling us this out of the goodness of your heart?" "I'm telling you this because I don't want to be part of a genocidal empire," Zalith snapped, her scales flashing angry orange. "Yes, I want sanctuary. Yes, I want protection. But I also want to sleep without seeing the faces of species we've pacified into extinction. Your rebellion gave me hope that the Empire could be stopped. Was I wrong? Tomas was already running calculations. If we could reach the forge, if we could destroy it or at least delay the weapon. It's in the Kravos sector, Zaleth said. 7 jump points from here, through the heart of Imperial space. Protected by the 5th and 9th fleets. It would be suicide. For a conventional assault, Mira agreed. But we're not conventional. Kenji shook his head. Captain, even with the tunneling drive, we don't have the firepower to take on a facility that size. We have 6 colonies and maybe 300 combat-capable ships. The Empire has millions. We don't need to win a war, Admiral. We need to win one battle. Mira turned to Tomas. Can you get a strike team into the forge undetected? The young engineer's eyes lit up with the dangerous gleam of someone solving an impossible problem. Maybe. If we modify the drive to work on smaller scales, create personal tunneling devices, it would be unstable, power-intensive, and possibly fatal. But possible? Possible? Yes. Survivable? He grinned. Let's find out. Zaleth's scales shifted to gold, respect. You're actually going to attack the Eternum Forge. Humans truly are insane. Yes, Mira said simply. That's why we'll win. The impossible team. Assembling a team to infiltrate the most secure facility in the galaxy required a special kind of crazy. Fortunately, humanity had that in abundance. Lieutenant Sofia Ramirez was the first to volunteer. At 32, she'd been a zero-gravity demolitions expert before joining the Colonial Defense Force, and she'd personally blown up 3 asteroids that threatened human settlements. She walked into the briefing room with her curly black hair barely contained by a bandana, tools hanging from every available belt loop. I heard we're breaking into an alien superweapon factory, she said cheerfully. I'm in. You haven't even heard the plan, Kenji pointed out. Don't need to. Anything that pisses off the Valdraxi is a plan I can get behind. She noticed Zaleth and froze. That's a defector, Mira finished. She's providing intelligence. Sophia's hand didn't move toward her weapon, but her posture shifted subtly. Right. Defector. Sure. The skepticism in her voice could have filled a cargo hold. The next arrival was unexpected. Dr. Alara Voss entered the room like she owned it, despite being barely 5 feet tall. The neurobiologist had silver hair she'd dyed deliberately at age 25, claiming it made her look appropriately mad scientist. She'd pioneered the neural interfaces that allowed humans to survive probability tunneling without losing their minds to temporal paradoxes. I hear you're doing human trials of the personal tunneling device, she said, looking directly at Tomas. Without proper medical oversight. Are you trying to turn our people into quantum paste? I've run the simulations. Simulations don't account for neural degradation when consciousness exists in multiple states simultaneously. You need me. Mira nodded. Welcome aboard, Doctor. The last member of the strike team entered silently. Sergeant Marcus Okoye was a legend in the Colonial Defense Force. A sniper who'd once held off a Corthan raiding party for 6 hours with nothing but a rifle and stubbornness. He was 45, built like a tree trunk, and spoke approximately 10 words per day. He looked at the assembled team, then at Mira. When? 3 weeks, she replied. We need time to build the personal drives and plan the insertion. Marcus nodded once and sat down. His entire contribution to the meeting. Zaleth projected the Eternum Forge again, this time with more detail. The facility is divided into 7 sectors, she explained, scales shifting to lecturer blue. Manufacturing, power generation, research, command, barracks, storage, and the array chamber itself. Each sector is separated by reality barriers, fields that prevent unauthorized matter transmission. Your tunneling drives might get you past the external defenses, she continued, but inside you'll need conventional access codes and biometrics. I can provide those for most areas, but the array chamber requires triumvirate-level authorization. I never had clearance. Sophia studied the schematics. What about the power generation? If we cut that, does the whole facility shut down? No. The forge has redundant quantum reactors. Destroying one would barely slow operations. You'd need to destroy all 7 simultaneously. Or, Tomas said slowly, we could do something more interesting. Everyone turned to him. The young engineer was staring at the schematic with that dangerous look he got when physics became personal. The array works by collapsing quantum possibilities, right? Forcing reality into a single state. Zaleth's scales rippled uncertainty. Oversimplified but essentially correct. What if we reversed it? Instead of collapsing possibilities, we expand them. Use their own weapon to create a probability cascade. The forge exists in a carefully controlled environment. If we introduce massive quantum uncertainty into that system, the entire facility would become unstable, Ilera finished, eyes widening. It would start phasing between probable states. Eventually it would tear itself apart, trying to exist in all of them at once. That's brilliant, Sophia said. Also completely suicidal. How do we introduce that kind of uncertainty? Tomas grinned. We use ourselves. Human neural patterns already generate quantum fluctuations. It's why we can use the tunneling drive. If we overload the personal devices while inside the array chamber, our consciousness becomes the uncertainty. We become living probability bombs. And we die, Marcus observed. First full sentence of the meeting. Maybe, Tomas admitted. Probably. Unless we can tunnel out at the exact moment of cascade. It would require perfect timing and a lot of luck. Luck, Mira said, is just probability that hasn't collapsed yet. We've gotten good at playing with probability. Kenji had been silent throughout the discussion, but now he stood. Let me be clear about what you're proposing. You want to infiltrate an impossible fortress, improvise access to a weapon you barely understand, turn yourselves into quantum grenades, and hope you can escape before reality itself tears you apart. Yes, sir, Mira confirmed. And if you fail, the Empire will nullify our worlds and humanity goes extinct. Also yes, sir. The Admiral looked at each team member in turn. Sophia, who was already calculating blast patterns. Ilera, furiously scribbling neural equations. Marcus, calmly field-stripping his rifle. Tomas, refining his probability mathematics. Zalith, scales showing determined gold. And Mira, who met his gaze with absolute certainty. Then you'd better not fail, Kenji said finally. You have 3 weeks. Make them count. As the team dispersed to begin preparations, Zalith approached Mira privately. Captain, may I ask something? Go ahead. Why do this? Why risk everything? Your species could survive subjugation. Many have. Mira smiled sadly. Because surviving isn't living. And humans would rather die free than live in chains. It's what makes us dangerous, Zalith. We're not afraid of impossible odds. We've been beating them since we climbed down from the trees. The alien scales shimmered with something that might have been understanding. The Empire has never faced a species like yours. No, Mira agreed. They haven't. 3 weeks of madness. The transformation of New Kyoto's research facility into a weapon factory happened with the controlled chaos that characterized human innovation. Where other species would have spent years in careful development, humanity threw resources, coffee, and sheer stubbornness at the problem. Tomas hadn't slept in 4 days. His workspace looked like a tornado had hit an electronics store. Circuit boards, quantum processors, and energy cells scattered across every surface. The personal tunneling drives were smaller than he'd hoped and larger than physics should allow, each one a cylinder of crystalline technology about the size of a water bottle. Try it now, he called out to the test chamber. Inside the reinforced room, a volunteer, Private James Chin, no relation to Jonas, stood wearing the prototype device strapped to his chest. He gave a thumbs up, trying not to look terrified. Ilera monitored his neural patterns from the medical station. Brainwave stable. Quantum coherence holding at 73%. Activating in 3, 2, 1. Private Chin vanished. For exactly 2 seconds the chamber was empty. Then reality hiccuped and Chin reappeared, 3 feet to the left and upside down. He crashed to the floor with an undignified yelp. Still working on the spatial orientation protocols, Tomas muttered, making notes. Sophia appeared in the doorway, covered in what looked like scorch marks. How's it going? He didn't explode this time. I call that progress. Great. Because I just blew up my 23rd attempt at a portable reality destabilizer. We might need to rethink the quantum grenade approach. They worked in parallel streams of organized chaos. Sophia developed shaped charges that could disrupt Valdraxi energy shields. Ilera created neural dampeners to keep the team's consciousness stable during tunneling. Marcus, true to form, simply cleaned his weapons and practiced shooting while existing in quantum superposition, a skill that should have been impossible but which he mastered through sheer bloody-mindedness. Zalith proved invaluable, her knowledge of Valdraxi systems filling gaps human intel couldn't touch. She worked with Tomas to calibrate the drives for Imperial technology, her scales constantly shifting between colors as she processed the collaborative chaos of human engineering. Your species doesn't follow linear research protocols, she observed one evening. watching Tomas simultaneously run 17 different simulations. Linear is boring, he replied, adjusting quantum field parameters. We prefer to try everything at once and see what doesn't kill us. That's insane. Yep. Also effective. Mira spent the 3 weeks coordinating logistics and dodging Admiral Nakamura's increasingly pointed questions about mission survival rates. She also trained with the team, learning the peculiar physics of personal tunneling. The first time she successfully phased through a wall, she emerged laughing like a child on Christmas morning. This is incredible. We can walk through matter. Don't get cocky, Elara warned. Your atoms are only partially here. Tunnel into something dense enough, and you'll collapse back to a single quantum state, inside solid matter. The results are messy. How messy? We're still cleaning Private Anderson out of that bulkhead. The laughter died. The team worked harder. On day 16 they had their first complete successful test. All 6 team members tunneled from one end of the facility to the other, maintaining consciousness and spatial orientation. Sophia hooped. Marcus nodded. Elara immediately demanded they do it 40 more times for statistical significance. But Tomas noticed something in the data that made his blood run cold. Mira, we have a problem. He showed her the neural scans. Each time someone tunneled, their quantum signature became slightly more unstable. It was cumulative. Reversible with rest, but in the field, under stress with multiple jumps. How many tunnels until permanent neural degradation? Mira asked quietly. Depends on the individual. 8 to 12 jumps before you start losing coherence. 15 to 20 before you can't return to a single quantum state. You'd be conscious in multiple realities simultaneously, unable to collapse back to one. And the mission requires? Minimum 15 jumps. Possibly more if we encounter complications. They looked at each other, the math brutal and clear. This was a one-way trip dressed up as a maybe. Does the team know? Mira asked. I was going to tell them. Don't? Captain. That's an order, Reeves. They volunteered for a suicide mission. Adding existential horror to the suicide doesn't change the fundamentals. We tell them the technical risks, not the philosophical ones. Tomas wanted to argue. Didn't? He understood the logic even if he hated it. The final week brought unexpected help. 3 more colony worlds sent volunteers, pilots, engineers, soldiers, all wanting to contribute to humanity's impossible gambit. Admiral Nakamura organized them into a distraction fleet, ships that would draw Imperial attention while the strike team infiltrated the forge. On the last night before departure, the team gathered in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, decades of light-speed travel away, but these stars felt like home too. Think we'll pull this off? Sophia asked. Marcus shrugged. Elara ran probability calculations in her head. Tomas tried to look confident and failed. Zalitha's scale showed honest silver, uncertainty. Mira raised a glass of synthesized whiskey. Humanity has been pulling off impossible things since we figured out fire. This is just our latest trick. To impossible things, Sophia toasted. To impossible things, they echoed. The stars watched, uncaring and eternal. But in 6 human hearts and 1 defector's alien biology, something burned that the Galactic Empire had never truly understood. Oh, defiance. The absolute refusal to go gentle into any night. Tomorrow they would jump into the abyss. Tonight they were alive, together and free. That would have to be enough. Into the forge. The Eternum forge hung in space like a monument to imperial arrogance, its impossible geometry a middle finger to conventional physics. Hundreds of ships orbited it, patrol craft, cargo haulers, dreadnoughts. Getting past them should have been impossible. Which was why they didn't try. Remember, Mira said over the team channel, we're not sneaking past their sensors. We're moving through probabilities where their sensors aren't looking. The 6 of them sat in a modified stealth shuttle, parked in the shadow of a dead moon 3 light minutes from the forge. Each wore the personal tunneling device, along with enough exotic equipment to make them walking physics violations. Tomas initiated the sequence. Probability field expanding. Finding the path of least observation. Mark in 5, for. Reality became negotiable. They didn't disappear from the shuttle so much as stop being entirely there. Each team member existed in a quantum superposition, present in thousands of probable locations simultaneously, collapsing into the single reality where they arrived at the forge undetected. The sensation was indescribable. Mira felt herself spread across space like butter across toast, her consciousness fragmenting into parallel streams. She was in the shuttle. On the forge. In the space between. All at once. None at all. Then, snap, singular reality reasserted itself. They materialized in a maintenance corridor deep inside the forge, chosen by Zalith for its minimal traffic. Emergency lighting cast everything in blue-gray shadows. The walls hummed with power that made human teeth ache. Sophia immediately vomited. That was worse than the simulations. Neural coherence check, Ilara demanded, pulling out her medical scanner. Everyone sound off. Stable, Mira reported, though the world still felt slightly sideways. Green, Tomas confirmed. Fine, Marcus grunted. Holding together, Sophia managed. Zalith's scales flickered with nausea purple. Your method of travel is deeply unpleasant. One jump down, Ilara noted grimly. Try to conserve them. They moved through the forge like ghosts, Zalith's access codes opening doors that should have been impenetrable. The facility was massive, kilometers of corridors, factories where crystalline warships grew like metal flowers, research labs where captured technologies were dissected and improved. They encountered their first patrol in Sector 3. 4 Valdraxi guards, their chitinous armor gleaming, weapon arms at rest. Standard procedure was to hide, wait for them to pass. Marcus didn't follow standard procedure. He stepped around a corner, raised his rifle and fired 4 times in 2 seconds. Each shot was impossibly perfect, striking the weak points Zalith had identified where Valdraxi armor met flesh. The guards dropped without a sound. We were supposed to avoid contact, Mira hissed. Marcus pointed at his weapon. Tomas had modified it to fire probability rounds, bullets that existed in quantum superposition until they hit. To sensors they'd never been fired. To the guards they were very definitely fatal. No energy signature, Tomas explained. As far as the Forge's systems know, those guards just stopped. They pressed deeper. Through manufacturing zones where enslaved species, Screeth, Korthan, others, labored under Valdraxi overseers. Sophia's hands clenched every time they passed workers, but freeing them wasn't the mission. Not yet. In Sector 5 they hit their first real obstacle. A reality barrier, shimmering across the entire corridor, technology specifically designed to prevent matter transmission. We need to tunnel past it, Mira decided. That's our second jump, Ilara warned. We're burning through our coherence fast. No choice. Tomas? He configured the drives for short-range phasing. On 3. Try to visualize being on the other side. It helps with spatial coherence. 1, 2. They jumped. This time the sensation was worse. The barrier fought them, trying to force their quantum states to collapse mid-transit. Mira felt herself stretched between realities like taffy, her consciousness screaming that she couldn't be in 2 places at once but physics insisting she was. Then they were through, gasping, shaking. Everyone here? Mira managed. Present, Sophia wheezed. Also, I hate everything about this. They'd penetrated 5 sectors. 2 remained before the array chamber, and already they'd used 2 jumps. The math was getting uncomfortable. Zalith led them through a service tunnel that ran along the forge's outer hull. Through transparent aluminum panels, they could see the vast shipyards, the construction of vessels designed to enforce Imperial will across the galaxy. There, Zalith pointed. A massive doorway sealed with both physical and energy locks. The array chamber. But there's a problem. Of course there is, Sophia muttered. The authorization system. I told you I couldn't bypass it. We need triumvirate-level biometrics, 3 separate members of the ruling council, all present simultaneously. So we're stuck, Ilara said flatly. Tomas was staring at the lock, his mind clearly racing. No, that's crazy. Everything about this mission is crazy, Mira said. Talk. The lock needs 3 triumvirate members present. But present is a quantum state. If we could exist in a superposition of being both here and not here, we might be able to convince the system that we're multiple beings simultaneously. We'd need to partially tunnel, hold ourselves in quantum flux, and hope the lock sensors interpret our multiplicity as multiple authorized users. That's not just crazy, Ilara said slowly. That's insane. Holding yourself in quantum superposition without collapsing? The neural strain. I can do it, Mira interrupted. I'll hold the state. You all get ready to enter the second the door opens. Captain. That's an order. Mira approached the lock, activated her tunneling drive, and deliberately stopped the collapse sequence midway. Her consciousness fractured, existing in 3 probable states simultaneously. The pain was exquisite, her brain screaming contradictions at itself. The lock flickered. Analyzing. Confused. Then, green light. Access granted. The massive door began to open, and Mira collapsed back into singular reality, blood trickling from her nose. Move, she gasped. They rushed into the array chamber, into the heart of humanity's extinction, and froze at what they saw waiting for them. The heart of Empire. The array chamber was a cathedral to cosmic arrogance. The weapon itself dominated the center, a sphere of impossible geometry that hurt to look at, surrounded by rings of machinery that pulsed with contained power. Energy conduits ran like veins through the floor, walls, ceiling. The air itself felt heavy with potential. But none of that mattered compared to the figure standing before the array. High Archon Zelvaris, all three heads smiling. Captain Kessler, he said pleasantly. We've been expecting you. The team spread out instinctively, weapons raised. Marcus's rifle tracked the Archon's center head. Sophia's hand moved to her explosives. Ilara's medical scanner suddenly felt very inadequate. It was a trap, Zalith whispered, scales flashing betrayal black. They knew we were coming. Not a trap, Zelvaris corrected. A test. We wanted to see how far human desperation would drive you. The answer, apparently, is all the way to our most secure facility. Mira kept her weapon steady, mind racing. If you knew, why let us in? Curiosity. Your species is anomalous. We've studied your probability drives, analyzed your quantum signatures. Fascinating technology. Primitive, yes, but imaginative in ways we'd never considered. He gestured to the array. We built this to destroy you. But watching you operate, we've realized something more valuable. And what's that? Tomas asked, though he was already running calculations on his wrist display. You could be useful. The Empire has conquered through superior technology and unified purpose. But we lack your species' particular brand of creative chaos. Join us willingly and we'll spare your worlds. Your probability drives would make excellent weapons against our remaining enemies. We'd rather die, Mira said simply. Yes, I expected you'd say that. Which brings us to option 2. Zelvaris touched a control and the walls shimmered. Displays activated, showing 6 human colony worlds. The array is complete. We lied about the timeline. It's been operational for weeks. One word from me, and New Kyoto ceases to exist across all probable timelines. Your families, your children, erased from every possible reality. Sophia's voice was ice. If you fire that weapon, this entire forge goes with it. How? You're 6 humans and a defector. We have 1,000 guards converging on this location. Because we're not here to fight, Mira said, finally understanding Tomas's plan. We're here to be impossible. She nodded to Tomas, who activated something on his wrist. The personal tunneling drives on all 6 team members began to overload, deliberately generating massive quantum uncertainty. Zelvaris's expression changed as he realized what was happening. You're creating a probability cascade. You'll destroy the entire facility. Yes, Mira confirmed. Along with the array, your shipyards, and probably you. But our people live. That's the trade. You'll die too. We made that choice 3 weeks ago. The quantum field was expanding now, reality beginning to flex around the team. They were becoming living paradoxes, existing in multiple states simultaneously. The array sensors screamed warnings, detecting the probability infection spreading through its carefully ordered systems. Zelvaris moved with impossible speed, diving for the control panel. But Marcus was faster. A probability round punched through the Archon's right head, and he staggered, 2 heads screaming while the third went dark. Zalith, Mira gasped, fighting to maintain coherence as her consciousness fragmented. Get them out. That's an order. The alien defector understood. She grabbed Sophia first, activating her tunneling drive, still set for normal operation, not cascade. No. I'm not leaving. You are. Tell them we mattered. Tell them we won. Zalith tunneled Sophia away, then returned for Ilara, who was already unconscious from the neural strain. Marcus went next, firing until the last second. Then Tomas. Captain, he said, the math? I know. Go. He disappeared. Mira and Zalith stood alone in the cascading chamber. Reality was breaking down around them, the array flickering between states, half complete and fully operational simultaneously. The forge groaned as quantum uncertainty infected its systems. I have 1 jump left, Zalith said. I can take you. And leave the cascade unstable? It might collapse naturally, let the forge recover. No. This needs a conscious mind to guide it. Someone has to stay to ensure the cascade completes. Zelvaris, still alive despite his wound, laughed wetly with his remaining heads. Martyr yourself then, human. The Empire will endure. We always do. Mira looked at him with something approaching pity. That's your weakness, Archon. You think enduring is winning. But my species doesn't just endure. We overcome. We adapt. We grow. You built an empire on stability and order. We built ourselves on chaos and change. Guess which one survives when reality starts bending? She turned to Zayla. Go. Live well. Tell Sophia she was right about the shape charges. I wish we'd used more of them. Zaylatha's scale showed every color at once. Grief, respect, fear, hope. The universe will remember this, Captain Mira Kessler. The universe can remember whatever it wants. I just need humanity to survive. Zaylath vanished. Mira was alone with the dying Archon and the collapsing array. She could feel her consciousness spreading, existing in more and more probable states. She was dying. She was already dead. She'd never been born. She was winning. She was losing. She was free. Mira walked into the array's heart, let her quantum signature merge with its systems. She became the virus in its code, the impossible in its certainty. She thought of Earth, of her mother's garden, of coffee on rainy mornings, of everything worth saving. And she pulled the entire Eternum Forge into probability hell with her. The last thing High Archon Zelvaris saw was a human woman smiling as she unmade reality itself. Then the Forge wasn't. Had never been. Would never be. Across all possible timelines simultaneously it ceased. The stars remember. The Eternum Forge's destruction rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave through probability itself. Ships jumping through hyperspace felt it. A moment where reality hiccuped and something vast simply stopped existing. On New Kyoto, Admiral Kenji Nakamura stood in the command center as sensors registered the impossible. The Forge, the 5th and 9th fleets and a 3-light-year sphere of space had become quantum uncertainty, neither destroyed nor existing, simply probable in ways that physics couldn't reconcile. They did it, he whispered. Tomas Reeves materialized in the recovery bay, along with the rest of the strike team. All except Mira. He knew immediately from Zaylatha's scales, mournful silver, that the captain hadn't made it back. She stayed, the alien said simply, to ensure the cascade completed. She saved us all. Sophia punched a wall hard enough to break her hand. Ilara wept silently, running trauma calculations she'd never get to share with Mira. Marcus stood at attention, tears streaming down his stoic face. They'd won. At a cost that felt like losing. But the consequences of their victory were only beginning. The Valdraxi Empire, for the first time in 3 centuries, convened an emergency session of the full triumvirate. The loss of the Forge, 2 fleets, and High Archon Zelvaris had decapitated their military command. The probability cascade had destroyed irreplaceable technology. For the first time ever, the Empire was vulnerable. And the galaxy noticed. Rebellions began on 17 occupied worlds. The Screeth, who'd labored in Valdraxi factories for generations, rose up with weapons made from stolen probability technology. The Korthan warrior clans, long subjugated, suddenly remembered they'd once been conquerors themselves. Within 3 months the Empire had lost 40 systems. Within 6, 100. The Valdraxi, desperate to restore order, deployed their remaining forces aggressively. But something had changed. The aura of invincibility was shattered. Every species they'd conquered now knew the truth, the Empire could bleed. And it had been 6 humans and a defector who'd drawn first blood. On New Kyoto, humanity's 6 colony worlds became 7, then 12, then 20. Species fleeing imperial repression sought refuge with the crazy apes who'd blown up the Eternum Forge. Humans welcomed them, not with promises of protection but with offers of partnership. We're not building an empire, Admiral Nakamura declared at the First Colonial Council. We're building an alliance of free worlds. Anyone willing to fight for their own freedom is welcome. Tomas led the technology sharing initiative, teaching other species how to build probability drives. Not everyone could use them, human neural patterns were uniquely suited to quantum uncertainty, but the principles could be adapted. Soon, dozens of species had their own probability-based technologies, each one uniquely suited to their cognitive structures. The Valdraxi called it chaos. Humanity called it innovation. Dr. Jonas Chin, who'd started this entire journey by standing beside Mira in the Nexus chamber, became ambassador to the Luminari. He negotiated the first formal alliance between humanity and another major power, creating a coalition that stretched across 200 systems. Sofia Ramirez took over strike force operations, training elite units from a dozen species in probability combat. Her teams hit Imperial installations with the same quantum unpredictability that had destroyed the Forge. She named her flagship the Myra's Defiance. Ilara Voss pioneered neural technology that allowed non-humans to interface with quantum systems. Her work saved thousands of lives and earned her the Luminari's highest scientific honor, which she accepted while wearing a t-shirt that read "Reality is negotiable." Marcus Okoye became exactly what he'd always been, the quiet guardian in the background. His probability rifle design was adopted by 17 military forces. He trained snipers who could shoot around corners, through walls, from positions that didn't technically exist. He spoke maybe 20 words a year. All of them mattered. Zalith became something unprecedented, the first non-human member of humanity's government. She served as liaison between species, her understanding of both imperial rigidity and human chaos making her invaluable. Her scales had found a new color, one never seen in Valdraxi biology before, hope gold. 2 years after the Forge's destruction, the Valdraxi Empire still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. The Triumvirate had been reduced to a single surviving member who ruled over barely 3,000 systems, less than a fifth of their former territory. They sent an ambassador to New Kyoto. Tomas, now chief of colonial defense, met them in the same briefing room where the strike team had first assembled. The Valdraxi diplomat, younger, less arrogant than Zelvaris, looked around nervously. "The Empire wishes to negotiate terms," the diplomat said. "We're listening. Withdrawal of human-backed forces from contested systems. Return of stolen imperial technology. And..." The diplomat's voice dropped. "Acknowledgement of Valdraxi sovereignty over our remaining territory." Tomas considered this. "We'll agree to respect your remaining territory on one condition. Which is, you free every slave species currently under imperial control. Let them choose their own path." "That's impossible. Our economy..." "Then we have nothing to discuss." Tomas stood to leave. "Wait." The diplomat's composure cracked. "You're destroying us. Your probability technology, your alliances, we can't compete." "Why?" Tomas paused at the door. "Because you tried to rule the stars without understanding what makes beings want to be free. You built an empire on control. We're building a coalition on choice. One of those things is sustainable. The other..." He shrugged. "Well, you're seeing what happens to the other." 3 months later, the Valdraxi Empire freed its slave species. Not out of compassion, but from the cold calculation that empire without subjects was impossible. The galaxy exhaled. 5 years after Mira Kessler walked into the Eternum Forge, humanity had become something unexpected. Not conquerors. Not rulers. But catalysts, the species that reminded the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for. Admiral Nakamura, now elderly and ready to retire, stood in the memorial garden they'd built on New Kyoto. 6 statues commemorated the Forge strike team. Myra stood at the center, her stone face smiling that confident smile that had started everything. Kenji placed a flower at the base, a hybrid rose, engineered to survive in alien soil. Like humans themselves. "We did it, Captain," he said quietly. "Not the way you planned maybe. But we did it." The stars above shone with the light of 1,000 free worlds, each one a testament to 6 humans who'd refused to accept that the impossible was impossible. The Valdraxi Empire had ruled the stars for 3 centuries. But they'd never ruled the humans. And now, the humans were teaching the stars a new way to shine, with the light of defiance, hope, and the absolute certainty that freedom, once tasted, could never be forgotten. In the end, that was humanity's greatest weapon. Not probability drives. Not quantum technology. But the simple, stubborn refusal to bow. The galaxy was learning that lesson. And it would never be the same.